Hey everyone, Haley here and welcome back to my channel. The topic of today's video is going to be tips for finding an apartment in Westwood, which is the city or town surrounding UCLA. For UCLA students, you'll want to stay tuned and see if you can get any insight about what exactly you do when you're looking for an apartment, because this is a really stressful and sometimes long process and there's a lot to cover, so I'm just going to jump in. Okay, so number one, you'll want to start looking early, and you may think that you don't really need to look early, but the whole reason that I'm posting this video today, January 4th, is because it's time to start looking for an apartment next year. So basically January and February is going to be the prime time to look for an apartment because it's still early. Yes, a lot of students have started to look, but there are still the lazy ones who haven't started to look. So you're giving yourself a good chance of finding what you're looking for. And the most important thing here is to keep an open mind because, like I just said a moment ago, you're probably not going to find every single thing you're looking for in an apartment. And also keep in mind with budget, obviously the bigger your budget, the more you're going to be able to get those things that you're looking for. So if you're looking for an apartment that has like a gym and a pool and parking and like you are going to have to be a little bit more flexible with your budget. Whereas if your idea is kind of just, I need somewhere to sleep and shower, that's very easy to find in Westwood. But there are a lot of things that are difficult to find in Westwood, such as like AC and parking. So just keep that in mind as you're on this journey. And once again, the earlier you start, the more likely you are to find what you're looking for. Okay, so there are a lot of different places you can look. If you want to find an apartment specifically in Westwood, I would probably recommend looking either on Facebook, and I'll tell you guys some specific pages you can look on. UCLA also on the Hill, usually there are one or two like student off-campus housing information sessions that take place. As far as Facebook goes, that's probably the most practical way for most students. And the three pages that I would recommend are, the first one is called UCLA Housing, Rooms, Apartments, and Sublets. The second one is called UCLA Off-Campus Housing, and the last one is called UCLA Housing and Roommate Search Public Group. And I will talk in a little bit more detail about what to look out for when you're looking on Facebook, but if you're going to go down that route, definitely check out those pages. There are a lot of people who are already living in apartments, aka other students who are living in apartments who are just looking for people to take a spot for their roommate. For example, maybe their roommate graduated or is graduating this year and then they don't want to move out themselves, so they're just looking for someone else to come on board with them. Okay, so when it comes to the terms of the place that you'll be living, you have a few different options here. Weigh these options very carefully. This is something that I wish I had done, but there are a lot of different things out there, but some of the most common things that you're going to see, especially on these Facebook groups, is one, you're going to see a lot of subletting. So if you don't know what a sublet is, that means that there is someone who lives at that apartment who is going to be out of the apartment for whatever reason. Maybe they're studying abroad for a semester or a quarter, whatever. They're just going to be gone. So you'll effectively be filling in for them, but you're not on the lease. Your name is not on the lease. You don't pay your money to the landlord or to the apartment. You're paying your money to that person whose name is on the lease. The other option is going to be, obviously you would be on the lease, but within signing a lease, there are a few different options. There is, of course, starting a new lease completely. So for example, let's say you and 5 of your friends identify an apartment where you want to live, you apply for that apartment, you get in, they have a unit for you, you're going to sign a new lease, you know, you're all 5 on that apartment, whatever. But there's also this thing that I think has become a lot more popular in recent years, which is a lease takeover, which is what I did. And basically what this means is that there is somebody, usually there's somebody who lives in the apartment already in a specific unit, and they are looking for other people to come live with them. So the main thing here I want you guys to watch out for is the fact that you will be incurring all debt that exists on that unit, all debt that exists on their account, and any damage that has been done to the apartment is going to be your responsibility. So if you move in and there's a giant hole in the wall, even if you didn't do it, at the end of the day, when you move out after your lease is up, you could be responsible for paying for that hole in the wall or repairing that hole in the wall or whatever the situation is. So it's, even though doing a lease takeover is usually less expensive because you also get the benefit of whatever rent they were paying, you are paying that same amount. And usually apartments are going to raise the rent every year. even though it's usually a lot cheaper than starting a new lease, you also kind of don't have some basic protections and securities in that with a new lease, anything that exists in the apartment before you moved in, that's not your problem, you know? Okay, so let's talk about finding roommates because I feel like this is a big one for a lot of people, and this certainly was a big one for me because you guys know I'm super antisocial. I didn't know a lot of people, and I was stressing about this before I even got to UCLA. A lot of people are probably gonna be in a situation where they're thinking, maybe I should live with some people that I already know, like maybe you have a group of friends, and you're all going to be looking for an apartment next year together. Why not look together? That is a great option, but just keep in mind that just because you know somebody does not always mean that it's ideal to be in a living situation with them, because living with somebody puts an incredibly stressful wrench into the mix, basically. And if you know that your lifestyle is not going to be compatible, if you know that they are up all hours of the night, you know, they have people over all the time and you hate that, they're messy, whatever, I would say probably don't do it. Like, you will be miserable. Trust me, you will be miserable. Just because you're friends does not mean that you should be roommates. Maybe you're in a situation where you're like, well, if I don't live with my friends, who am I gonna live with? I don't know anybody at UCLA. Like, this is a huge school. I get that because that's the situation that I was in personally. But the devil that you know is not better than the devil that you don't. And what that basically means is just because you know somebody and you feel like, okay, this is a safe situation, like I already know these people, like I'm scared to take a risk. I'm scared to, you know, find people on Facebook. What if I hate them? That may be true. But would you rather take that risk? Maybe you hate them, maybe you love them, there's a 50-50 chance, or go into a living situation where you know you guys are not compatible? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Let's discuss moving in with strangers because that's kind of what I did. So I share a room personally with my friend Jessica, who was my roommate last year when I lived on the hill in UCLA. But we have a 2-bedroom apartment, and in the other bedroom are 3 girls who were essentially strangers, and who really are still strangers because I really don't know them, to be honest, that we found on Facebook. And I just talked about the devil that you know isn't necessarily better than the devil that you don't, but taking on a lease and moving into an apartment with someone that you don't know is a gamble because you could end up hating them. And I'm just gonna be completely honest, I hate my roommates right now. And you guys might be like, why are you posting this online? Because it's just honest. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. I don't like them. I can tell they don't like me. And that's completely fine. Like, that's not even really the issue. The issue is respect. And it's very obvious that they don't have any respect for me or Jessica. So what I wish that I would have done differently is vetted my roommates way more than I did. Basically, when I decided to move in with these people, we met up, we were like, oh yeah, like you guys seem nice. Of course, everyone seems nice the first time you meet them, like whatever. And then we looked at the apartment, I was like, okay, it looks cool. What I wish that I would have done is met up with them multiple times, walked into their dorms to see what their living conditions are like, because these people are filthy. And if I would have walked into their dorm and just spent a little bit more time getting to know them, even like being like, hey, do you want to meet up for like dinner or whatever, and then going to their dorm or whatever, like you just know how they are to some degree. And that I think would have set up some red flags for me that I would have been able to pay attention to and be like, no. Of course, there's not a lot you can do if you don't know the person, but I'm just telling you guys, like, please do a little research, hang out with them, get to know them, especially if you're going to be sharing the room with them. Like, thank God I have Jessica because we share the room, and that is truly our sanctuary, because literally the kitchen, the living room, like, we don't spend any time in there because, like, we're so uncomfortable with it. Anyway, that's enough of a rant about myself, but learn from my mistake. Vet your roommate. Another really hot topic when it comes to finding an apartment in Westwood is parking, because you guys, if you even think that you're gonna be able to park your car on the street, let me just tell you right now, you will not. There is never anywhere to park on the street in Westwood, so don't even think about it because you will end up circling every time. Now guys, here's the reality check. Most apartments aren't going to have free parking. So I moved to LA, and when I moved to LA, I realized that there's no such thing as free parking. Even if you go to Target, you have to pay for parking, which is like crazy for me because that's not the way it is where I'm from. But anyway, yeah, apartments are no exception. There is pretty much, I don't actually think any of the apartments that I looked at, and I considered like 7 different apartments, none of them had parking included in the rent. So if you're going to be paying for parking, that's going to be on top of your rent. So that's something to consider if you're on a budget. Just to give you guys an idea, my parking is $150 a month on top of my rent. And I have a single spot, which means that I get to come and go as I please. There is a cheaper parking option at my apartment, and this is really, really, really popular in Westwood, so pay close attention, which is called a Tandem Spot. It's $100 a month, so you do get $50 cheaper. But with a Tandem Spot, what that means is there's basically two cars parked in front of each other. So imagine this is a car, imagine this is a car. You're parked like this. So basically, whether this person is leaving, well, maybe not so much if this person is leaving, but if this person is leaving, and this is the wall, by the way. So you're parked against a wall and two cars, someone's blocking you. Basically, every time you're gonna move your car or you're gonna leave or whatever, come in, try to park in your spot, you're gonna have to contact that other person. So basically, you're dependent on that other person. So tandem parking spots, look it up. I hope that made sense. I'll put a little visual right here if you're still kind of confused about what a tandem parking spot is. So when it comes to actually looking for an apartment, how do you know whether one is good or safe or reliable or has pesky landlords or whatever? Well, you know, obviously word of mouth is a big way, but something that I did and I would highly recommend you doing is checking online reviews of the apartments. So definitely check Yelp, because with Yelp especially, there are a lot of people reviewing who don't actually go to UCLA, so you're getting kind of outsider opinions. These are probably like actual adults who know what they're talking about, and they're going to give you the unbiased review of like, this, you know, this landlord is ripping you off, da, 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 like this is a waste of money, like don't live here, it's not safe, whatever. You can also check Brew and Walk, which is a website for UCLA students, which you can use to check professor reviews and see if they're good. It's like Rate My Professor, but specifically for my UCLA. What you may not know is that there also is a housing section where you can look up apartments, and I would definitely recommend looking at Brew and Walk. Look at all of those things. Of course, take every review with a grain of salt, because most of the time when people leave reviews, they've either had a really positive experience or a really negative experience. You hardly ever get those middle of the road people. But also, I would still kind of pay attention to any little details they mention. Break-ins are a big deal. Lazy landlords are a big deal. Nosy landlords are a big deal. Just pay attention to it all, because trust me, when it comes down to it, this is stuff that you're going to have to deal with at some point. And do you want to be miserable, or do you want to be content, or do you want to be happy? That's your choice, but please read into it. It's worth it. Okay, so a lot of apartments in Westwood are not furnished. There are some apartments that are furnished, and a lot of times landlords will use that as a way to justify really high rent. But let me tell you guys why I think you should not worry about getting a furnished apartment. There are so many options when it comes to furnishing your apartment, and you can get incredibly cheap stuff that is actually good quality, because a lot of students, when they graduate and they're leaving Westwood, they don't want that stuff. Definitely check UCLA Free and For Sale on Facebook. Also, Craigslist is a great way. Also, if you know someone who has like a lot of friends who are seniors, or if you know a lot of seniors, ask them what they're doing with their furniture. I'm sure they'd be happy to sell it with you. Don't get suckered into paying a higher rent because there's like this promise of free furniture. Also, don't get suckered into like buying furniture from the apartment, because a lot of apartments will be like, oh, we have this service that you can do. There's like actually some UCLA furniture service. I don't remember what it's called, but I mean, if you want to do it, go for it. I would recommend just looking online. Also, garage sales are a huge one. I love garage sales, yard sales, Salvation Army, Goodwill, whatever. You can find really cheap stuff that's good, and someone doesn't want it, but one man's junk is another man's treasure. Just keep that in mind. Final point is going to be about location. So obviously, if you're a UCLA student, being close to campus is a big deal, especially if you don't have a car, but it's not the end of the world. Living in Westwood is great in terms of the convenience and the proximity to campus, but it also comes at a really big price tag, because, and I've said this before in other videos, but according to Yahoo Finance, the Westwood zip code 90024 is the #4 most expensive zip code for renters in the nation. There are some locations in Westwood you may want to avoid. For example, if you're looking for a quiet space to study, I wouldn't recommend living on Kelton Avenue. That is like party central. Don't live near the frat houses. As much as you think like, oh, I'll just put earplugs in. Trust me, I live like 2 blocks away from the frat houses, and all I hear, actually doesn't matter what day of the week it is. It's worse on the weekends, yes, but it literally could be like Monday night and people would be partying. I can hear it. And then I wake up all the time at like 2, 3 in the morning and people are like screaming in the street, like these drunk college kids. And I'm just like, can you shut up? So yes, you will hear it. If you're concerned about noise, please heed my warning. You're probably gonna hear it no matter where you are in Westwood, but definitely try to avoid those areas if that's an issue for you. So if you're south of Wilshire, I think you're officially out of Westwood. That is pretty far, but there is public transportation that you can take. There is a bus system that will take you pretty much to the campus loop in front of UCLA, which is really convenient. And same thing, if you're like on Veteran Avenue, which is the side facing the cemetery near the 405, you may feel like that is kind of far away, but you can take a bus and it will take you right to campus. You don't have to worry about walking up and down all those hills. The last point that I want to make is just about being smart and being safe where you're looking. Don't fill out a bunch of applications if you're not serious about living there. Don't give out your social security number all willy-nilly to anybody who asks for it. You know, don't be giving out your credit score and stuff like that. Like, just be conscious of what you're doing, be smart, and if you have a bad feeling about something, don't do it. Like, my friend always says energy doesn't lie, and you know what, guys, energy doesn't lie. Like, if you walk into a place and you have a bad feeling about it, don't live there. Like, there are plenty of apartments in Westwood. A lot of landlords will try to scare you and be like, oh, it's going fast, like this is your last chance. Like, they're like used car salesmen. Like, no, there are other options. Like, never settle. At some point, yeah, you will have to settle and you'll probably have to compromise on a few things, but like, don't settle on a big thing and don't compromise on something that you feel like is central to your comfort and to your health and well-being. The moral of the story is, there are a lot of apartments out there. I think a lot of landlords are preying on young UCLA students, knowing that they can take advantage of them, knowing that they're desperate to find somewhere to live close to campus. They're charging you ridiculous rent even though it's a piece of crap apartment. Just be smart, guys. If you're close with your parents, please have your parents look over your contract before you sign anything, before you sign any leases. Run everything by them because they're watching out for your back. They have your best interests at heart. These landlords don't. And be smart. And most of all, what I want to say that I found this resource, and it's been pretty helpful, is UCLA Student Legal Services. It's not free. I think it's like $10 for an hour-long session, but you get to speak with a lawyer. Maybe have them look over your lease if you're concerned about anything beforehand, but don't be afraid to go to them because, like I said, a lot of landlords are just preying on UCLA students because they think they're naive, they think they're stupid. Don't fall into their trap. Be smart about everything, and you guys will be great. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope that this helped. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I can try to answer them. I don't know everything. This is my first apartment personally, so don't hate me if I can't answer your question, but I'm happy to at least attempt to answer, or I can try to redirect you in the right direction to someone who does know the answer. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, please give it a like and a thumbs up if you enjoyed or benefited from this content. I am constantly posting new UCLA, community college, and UC application advice. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And for my subscribers, I will see you next Saturday at 3 p.m. Bye!